Hi guys, I hope you've been enjoying this last week. I hope that you and your family have been celebrating Holy Week together. You know that every day Pastor Jason will send out a lesson at noon, and in that email there's resources at the bottom. It says extra resources. You open that up and there's activities for you guys to do with your families. So be sure to really check that out and dig into everything that God has for us to learn during this week. So we're about halfway through. It's Wednesday, and I wanted to just, instead of doing our normal midweek program, I wanted to dig into some of the things and review what Jesus did each day of Holy Week. So on Sunday was the first day, and I drew this quick picture of the palm branches and the cloak, because this is the day that Jesus was triumphantly entering Jerusalem, and everybody was cutting down the branches, throwing their cloaks on the ground, saying, "Hosanna, Hosanna, here comes the King," right? But we talked, they sort of misunderstood what the king was there to do, right? They thought that he was going to be there to run out the Romans and become their mighty king. Instead, he was going to sacrifice. And that's why he came on a donkey. And then Monday, he came into the temple and started knocking over these tables. You see, I drew a picture of a table with some money on the ground and the sheep, because a lot of people came into the temple to worship God by sacrificing sheep and giving their money and all these things. But a lot of people had been in the temple basically stealing by charging a really high tax for being able to even enter the temple or to use anything. So Jesus runs in there, he starts flipping tables, and he says, "This is to be a house of prayer and not a den of robbers." And so it's important to realize that on Monday, Jesus started to show how different he really was. Instead of running into the Capitol and telling the Romans, like, "Hey, you need to get out of here, I'm in charge now, I'm the king of the Jews," he's saying what comes first is your relationship with God. You need to make this temple a house of prayer, and you also need to make your temple, your own body, a place that's clean and that's ready for Jesus to make a difference. And sometimes that might mean flipping some things over in your life and knocking out the sins and driving out everything that's wrong in your life. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, Jesus continued to teach in the temple. So Jesus spent a lot of time teaching in the temple. And both these days, there were a lot of questions that were put to him and challenges. So a lot of people were trying to catch him in what he was saying, trying to get him to say something wrong. But we know Jesus, he never said anything wrong. He never did anything wrong. And so his answers were always perfect. And he always continued to point towards how he was focusing on the heart instead of just the world. Again, everybody thought he would be the Messiah, the king that would come in, kill their enemies, and rule. And he's saying, "No, we need to kill sin, and I'm going to do that with a sacrifice." And people just didn't understand that. So through both Tuesday and Wednesday, he was teaching, and people were listening, but then a lot of people were also getting frustrated because they didn't understand what he came to do. On Thursday, which is tomorrow, we know that he had his Last Supper. And so when you get tomorrow's resources, make sure you read through that and try to understand what it is that Jesus did on this day. It's really significant because Jesus sets up the new covenant. Covenant is one of those big words that's hard to understand, but basically it means agreement. And in the Old Testament, there had been agreement between the Israelites and God. God said, "I will be your I will be your God. You can be my people, and you obey me. I'll take care of you." Basically, it was like that. And unfortunately, it didn't work very well. The Israelites were really bad at keeping up their side of the deal. So many times they went and chased false gods. If you've been paying attention to other midweek lessons, we know that we've been learning about those kings. King Josiah, who became a king at age 7, and he was like one of only a few good kings in Israel's history, and he was destroying all the idols that they had set up to worship. So basically, this covenant, this agreement, didn't work very well. Not because of God. He held up his part of the deal, but the Israelites couldn't keep up theirs. And so, because God loved them, he set up a new covenant. So right here on Thursday, they have their supper together, and they drink some wine and eat some bread. And God gives them significance. He says, "This bread is my body, which is about to be broken for you. And this wine, this drink, is my blood, which is about to be shed for you." And he's talking about how very soon he's going to go to the cross and die, have his body broken, have his blood shed in order to pay for our sacrifice. In order to pay for our sin. He's going to be our sacrifice for our sin. Just like at the beginning of this whole thing, right? We go back to Sunday. He came in, but he was the unexpected king. They didn't expect him, he didn't do what he expected, right? He said we need to drive out sin. We need to become close to God. He was teaching. They were trying to trap him. And then he says, this is what I really want. I want you to join this new covenant with me where you trust in me and my body and my blood covers your sin. And then Friday, he dies on the cross. And this is called Good Friday, even though it's one of the saddest days in history, because literally God died. And not only did he died because of us. There's no reason that he needed to die other than our own sin. So on this day, Jesus gave up his life and he cries out to God and he says, why have you forsaken me? And this is because he took our sin. Our sin separates us from God. And when Jesus took it, it separated him from God for a short time. But then he paid for it. And so while he's dead, Saturday, he's sitting in the tomb. Not much is happening. I put these Z's here because he's not sleeping. He's actually dead. But everybody's waiting. They're not sure what's going on. And so it's just a day of rest. Everybody's wondering, Jesus said he was going to come back to life. Is he actually going to do it? And so people are waiting to see, is he really this mighty king who's going to defeat sin like he said he would. And then on Sunday, we know that he comes back to life, and we celebrate that as Easter, and we celebrate the empty tomb. So this is just a quick overview of what Holy Week looks like. Make sure you check out those activities with your family and that you listen to those lessons from Pastor Jason and see if you can understand, what it is that Jesus did for you. And my hope is that by the time you get to Sunday, you're so excited about what Jesus has done for you that when we get to our Easter celebration, you are ready to worship him with all that you've got. So with that, I want to show you a couple results from our challenge last week. We challenged you to make something good, make something yummy and edible. So check out what Toby did. That looks delicious, Toby. Thanks for your submission. Alright guys, stay tuned. Friday there'll be another email with just your updates, and make sure you get into those Holy Week lessons and doing those activities with your families.